Entering the Mayo experience.
That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to another edition of the Dog or Pass podcast. I'm your host, Paul Shaughnessy, joined in studio by your friend and mine, Mr. Cody Saftic, here to break down UFC 224 from Rio De Janeiro, Brazil. This could be a Fox card. I'm not going to sit here. I'm going to probably get the little bit of complaints out of the way. Like, this is a fun card. I think there's a lot of potential for some violence and some interesting fights and stuff. It doesn't really got that pay-per-view big event feel, but...
Okay, but fair enough. But how many events are you going to get on a yearly basis? Let's say there's 12 events. How many of those have big pay-per-view feel?
How many have we had in 2018 that have had the big pay-per-view feel?
Yeah, and this is not a big pay-per-view.
There was the Khabib card, and then that thing became such a disaster that card kind of fell apart as well.
In defense
2018
of this card,
has been rough.
In defense
but I think
of
the
this
summer,
card,
it always heats up in the summer, so we're going to be getting there soon.
Yeah. No, I hear all the complaints, but the only defense I have is when you look at least with the main card, you're getting a lot of fairly good name value. Leon Machida versus Vitor Belfort is a curtain jerker on a pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. That could headline a Fox, maybe not a Fox card. That could headline a Fight Night card, no problem.
Fight Night Belem.
Yeah, shockingly, both of them coming off victories. No idea how.
Good point. Yeah, let's get right into the action here. Main event, we've got Amanda Nunes taking on Raquel Pennington. Nunes is 9,500 on DraftKings, Pennington 6,700, minus 1,000 for Nunes, plus 650. It's kind of the weird fight that they were just like, Nunes has kind of run through everybody in there, has fought everybody in the division, or the other people that she hasn't fought are coming off of losses, that type of thing. Who else do we really have? It's Pennington. The fight that everyone wanted was Cyborg and Nunes at 145 pounds. Maybe they'll set that up after this. This all sets up for a one-sided ass kicking, especially when you put Amanda Nunes in Brazil against Pennington. The one question you have on DraftKings is she going to pay off 9,500? That's a hefty price tag, and you can probably do a lot more with your rosters if you kind of stay away from her. Is she going to finish it early? Pennington's super, super tough. She does keep Amanda Nunes does keep a pretty high volume, so she could rack up points that way. I don't have a great sense of how many points she'll score. All I know is that you can do a lot by staying away from her. I don't know what you take.
No, I'm a little bit worried with it too, just because predominantly the price tag's gigantic here. I don't think there's a whole lot of people that are going to bet Raquel Pennington outright, but when you look at the fact that she's coming in as a 10-1 underdog, or at least Nunes, Nunes is a 10-1 favorite. She's plus 650. That's what makes it tempting. She's also got a really cheap price on DraftKings. So if you thought for whatever reason she can get this fight to deep waters, if she can do something with it, then she's worth the play. But as far as Amanda Nunes goes, outside of most people thinking she's probably going to get the victory here, I don't like the price tag whatsoever. First of all, 10-1 favorite, that's gigantic. Nunes has got issues here, namely that she's been on the sidelines for nearly 2 years. Prior to that, she's kind of slow, she's kind of plodding. Nunes is bigger, faster, stronger, and you're going to pick the bigger, faster, stronger fighter in most cases.
Of course.
But traditionally, and that's just always how she's been, she'll either knock you out in the first couple rounds,
or she gets to round 3 and she gasses
out.
She gasses. It's real slow pace. It's like her versus Shevchenko in their last fight. It's like that thing went to 5 rounds, and there wasn't very much scoring. That was a fight that you probably should have avoided. Maybe you could have stacked it in cash. I forget what they scored.
Look way back into the Kat Zingano fight, where she has a good first 2 rounds. She gasses in 3rd, she gets TKO. Then you look at the first Shevchenko fight, she demolishes her the first 2 rounds, and then she gets tired, and all of a sudden Shevchenko's fighting her way back. The problem with the 5-round fight is if you don't think you can knock this person out right away, and you admit it yourself, Raquel Pennington, pretty tough. But if you can't knock them out in the first 2 rounds, then you're going to have to set into a pace. You're going to have to settle into a rhythm, conserve some energy. If she's not pushing the pace and she's fatiguing, and a girl like Rocky Pennington, who's always moving forward, who's trying to make it a dirty fight, she could rough her up a little bit. If it gets to around 4 and it gets to around 5 and she can tire her out, then who knows? She looked awesome against Miesha Tate. The problem there is that it's 2 years ago, A, and B, Miesha Tate is just not the same
looked awesome
Miesha
against
Tate.
Miesha Tate?
Yeah, fair.
Is Amanda Nunes, who absolutely obliterated her, broke her nose, and finished her in the first round.
Yeah, but you go back to the first time Shevchenko, they fought once, and then the fight gets booked, right? And she pulls out the day of the fight with basically like a nasal infection. And if you go back to the Ronda Rousey fight, she's coming out with the nasal strips. Apparently, she can't really breathe out of her nose, which is probably why she fights the way she does. I'm just going to try to claw you out in the first 2 rounds.
If don't.
Yeah, if it's a 3-round fight, I'll just lose the 3rd round and still win at 29-28. But in a 5-round fight, I got to pace myself like a Tyron Woodley. pace myself, land my shots in spots.
Yoel Romero type of style.
But there's a lot of inactivity in those lulls between action because you're not going balls to the walls the entire time. You don't want to tire yourself out. But so she pulls out of the Shevchenko fight with the nasal issue. Finally, when the fight comes to fruition, I'll condemn her on the fact that I thought she'd gas out and Shevchenko would win the latter 3 rounds, but she kind of rallied back in the fifth. Like she caught some type of second win, if she has a second win. I don't know, but the fact that she deals with breathing issues, she's not, I live in Brazil full time, I'm from Rio de Janeiro. She's got to fly all the way down from Miami. It didn't look, during the embedded episodes, it didn't look like she was in wicked shape, pumped up, ready to go. It looked like she's a girl that just got off a long-ass plane ride, which she did, and kind of looked half fatigued about it. So if Rocky can go out there and push a type of pace, she can at least make it interesting. Interesting enough that 10-1 on a straight money line, I don't like that. Dude, it's 10-1.
I think we both agree that she's likely to get the victory here.
Likely to get the victory, but then again, on the DK side of things, $9,500.
Yeah.
Like
you need a guaranteed 100 points there.
Like
if you're paying that,
points.
you need the 100 points.
Yeah. Now Raquel Pennington doesn't have great submission defense, and if I'm Amanda Nunes, I'm better on the ground. I'm a little bit bigger and stronger than this girl. Try to get the fight to the ground.
Not a great wrestler though.
Not a great wrestler, just strong, explosive,
Yeah.
can kind of just drill you to the ground, but Pennington's going to make you work. And if she goes with a grappling-based attack, then she's going to tire herself out way more than pot-shotting shots on the feet. So her best path to victory might not be an avenue she's looking to take here. And like I said, because the fight is somewhat interesting to me and not just a clear-cut wash, I need this person on all my lineups, I'm kind of avoiding it, especially because I like some other plays that are a few $100s cheaper that I want to save my money and go after them.
Couldn't agree more. All right, let's move on. We got Jacare Souza taking on Kelvin Gastelum. Souza is 8,400 on DraftKings, 7,800 on the betting line, minus 145. Jacare plus 125. Kelvin, who we got?
So basically, I'm thinking about this fight, and I was like, man, I got Jacare here, bigger guy. We've seen how Kelvin Gastelum, who is a natural welterweight, has trouble making the weight, but is a natural welterweight. When he fights a guy like Chris Weidman, who has a grappling advantage, he just big brothers him, dude. He just takes him down.
We kind of saw that coming. He had a lot of success at 185 pounds, and then what ended up happening? Eventually, you run into the guys that are big 185ers, and Weidman was an example of a guy who's just stronger, was able to kind of bully him and control the pace of the fight, control basically everything in that fight.
Yeah, and you know what? He hasn't had a bad run at middleweight, but I think when you think about a lot of the guys that he's fought at 185 pounds, he matches up. Like Michael Bisping was one eye shot, 6 weeks removed from an absolute beatdown at the hands of Georges St. Pierre. And before that, he fight Vitor Belfort. Like, you want to talk about shot fighters, which we're getting in a minute. He's had almost an easy path at 185 pounds. You know, even the Nate Marquardt fights, like, they're just giving him...
Shinny guys that have seen better days.
Way past their prime. Yeah. But he can style on these guys. He looks really good against these guys. It's fun. But Weidman was really the first time he fought a grappler. And to me, he had a great first round. Like, he hurt Chris Weidman, who seems to be getting hurt a lot these days. But as soon as Weidman secured those takedowns, and even though Gastelum is coming from a wrestling base, you're a lot bigger than he is, you know? A guy like Jacare can fight at 205 pounds, be a small 205er, but he can fight at 205 pounds. He's a gigantic middleweight. He goes in there, and Weidman's a big middleweight too. You go in there, you secure those takedowns, use your striking long enough to set up the takedown, but get the takedown. Jacare is way better than Weidman on the ground. I can't say way better, but is better. You know, they're both high-end black belts.
Jacare's getting up there in age, though, now.
Yeah, he says he's 38. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. He is getting up there in age. And like I said, I'm thinking about this fight, and Jacare is only minus 150, and there's a decent line on him. I mean, Weidman was able to submit him in the third round. And then I got this little feeling in my gut. First, I thought it was indigestion. Turns out, it was a bad feeling, Paul. If you watch any of the countdown stuff, and I had heard that Jacare wasn't training at Kings anymore because that's where Kelvin Gastelum is. And he wasn't training at
X Gym?
Yeah, the X Gym. He wasn't there anymore. He wasn't down at
Then he was training.
Center.
He was training with Mike Perry for a point in time,
That's
and then
where
Mike
he's at.
Perry's actually gone to Jackson's now.
Winklejohn.
So what's going on?
Yeah, so if you watch any of the countdown special, he moved to Orlando. He moves his whole family from California to Orlando. He says because the weather's more like Brazilian weather. I say because the money is so much cheaper in Central Florida than it is in California. Sure. So, anyways, he moves his family there, but he's basically working at he's training at a gym in the middle of a little strip mall near Orlando. It's called O'Keefe, Florida, and I don't know, man. Like, Alex Nicholson's his top training partner. Alex Nicholson's old man is his strength and conditioning coach, so he might be in great
This is
shape.
the very gym that Mike Perry just pulled himself out of and went.
Yeah. And so he's the best guy in the room.
times.
You even see him when he's training. Like, he's just by far the best guy. Nobody there is going to teach him anything about jiu-jitsu. No. Nobody there is really going to teach him about striking, considering the guy worked out with guys like Rafael Cordeiro and Anderson Silva for so long. Like, well, what else are you going to teach him? And he's 38 years old. Like, you really going to teach an old dog new tricks? Is he really going to change the way he fights at this point?
No.
He's just got to keep his weapons sharp. And I don't know that place is keeping his weapons sharp.
If he can get the fight to the ground, we know nobody has more dominant offensive jiu-jitsu than this guy in the UFC. But the problem is if this plays out similar to Whitaker, where it's like you're able to get him down, but he pops back up. And Gastelum and Whitaker have a lot of similarities.
Fair enough.
It's like Gastelum used to fight at 170. Whitaker was massive for 170 and always struggled, and it probably hurt his performances. And he's put on a lot of bulk since then. And I would say he has obviously a little bit more power than Kelvin Gastelum, but like they're both pretty quick. They're very agile, and they have good foot movement. If Gastelum can kind of mimic that type of style of fight, Gastelum probably has the advantage on the feet here. We look at the one, really probably the shining moment for Gastelum in his middleweight career at this point. This is a Tim Kennedy fight. Both me and you were in attendance at UFC 206 at the ACC here in Toronto, and you had a guy trying to take him down, and as the fight went on, Gastelum wasn't getting taken down, and you could just see Tim Kennedy wearing down. If he can kind of play that type of game, I think Gastelum's going to be kind of the chalk underdog, and we know what always happens with that. I always get drawn to this kind of guy, and then the favorite wins. I feel bad about it now, but like this is the exact same pricing that like Brunson versus Jacare was in that last one.
Yeah, but
and I trust Brunson.
And
the problem with Brunson was that we knew that his chin is garbage and he can't really take it anymore, or he never really could. And Gastelum, like his chin checks out. It's whether Jacare can suck him up against the fence, find a way to get to the mat, and when he does, Kelvin's going to be a bad spot. But I do actually prefer Kelvin Gastelum as a play here at 7,800.
Don't mind it, but if this was actually a fight night card and this title fight wasn't on it, obviously, because it was a fight night, and this actually ends up being the main event and it's a 5-rounder, tempting. Because Kelvin Gastelum got a great gas tank on him. He keeps pushing the pace. But going back to that Tim Kennedy fight, because I agree with you, that's probably Gastelum's, in my opinion, his best win at 185 pounds. You knock out Tim Kennedy. We all know how good Kennedy is. But when you watch that fight, Kennedy's probably winning the first 2 rounds. Thing is, he gets caught in the 3rd round. He starts struggling with his takedowns. He gets taken out. This is a 3-round fight. If Jacare is able to use that size the first couple rounds and then ended up just losing the 3rd round, well, then, you know what I mean? He's still going to end up edging out to decision. It's in Brazil, so if the fight's close, if it's first round, definitely Jacare. And 3rd round, definitely Gastelum. But that 2nd round's kind of up in the air. Then there's a good possibility that because of that crowd noise and because you know how raucous these Brazilian fans are, that maybe he'll just be able to edge it out. We don't know those possibilities. It's on the table, certainly. But even if you question Jacare's cardio, and I'll say in the Whitaker fight, it's more that he probably took Whitaker lightly. He starts to tire in the 2nd round, and then he just straight up gets hurt.
I think he was shocked at Whitaker's ability to avoid the takedown.
But look at his fight with Yoel Romero.
Ability to get up.
Look at his fight with Yoel Romero. In a fight that I thought Jacare beat Romero, is that he gets almost KO'd in that 1st round, but the 2nd and 3rd round, his cardio checks.
He's also taking on a guy that historically gasses out pretty hard when he goes hard.
Yeah, but at least he's shown that he can.
Gastelum's going to have the gas.
At least he shows that he can blow you out in the 1st round with a knockout or a submission, or if the fight does go 3 rounds, he's not a fish out of water.
So you got Jacare.
I'm going to go with Jacare. 8,400 on DraftKings. I think I'm going to avoid that. I like some of these other plays that we're going to get to a little bit more. The -145, geez, that's actually very tempting to me. I think he'll ever so slightly be able to get the edge, but I'm not going big on it. I'm not going to bet significant on it, and that goes back to I don't know him training in Southern Florida with nobody is going to help him. Like iron sharpens iron, but like shit doesn't sharpen iron. It just kind of like covers it, smears around, doesn't dull it.
Stink.
Doesn't dull it, but he's going to be the same fighter we've seen him in the past. He's not going to be a better version, which at 38, he probably wasn't going to be a better version anyways, but I think I'm going to ever so slightly go with Jacare here.
We got Mackenzie Dern taking on Amanda Cooper. Dern is 9,100 on DraftKings. Cooper can be had for 7,100. -250 Dern, +210 Cooper. When this thing opened, it opened up -530 Mackenzie Dern. And like that's just, for the glaring holes that we saw from this girl in her UFC debut against Ashley Yoder. She's never be a minus 530 against anybody in the UFC. We know what Dern can do. She gets you to the ground. She's super dominant, world class in jiu-jitsu, born into this type of thing. She has no wrestling though, and that's a big problem. Like we look at other people who are really good at jiu-jitsu, like Damian Maia. Damian Maia started going on a run towards the title when he started when his chain wrestling just really started to develop, and he started taking guys down like Rory McDonald, and basically every single fight that he was in, he was able to take people down until he obviously met the champ Tyron Woodley, and he wasn't able to. But if you're gonna have that skill, you gotta also have the wrestling. And I saw in that Yoder fight somebody who is completely lost when it comes to wrestling, whether it's middle of the cage, up against the cage, everywhere. She looked completely lost. She doesn't really look like she's in great shape. We know how good she is when she gets the fight to the ground. I don't love Amanda Cooper here at all. I'll probably have a couple small little plays on her. Even if she does win, I don't know how many points that she does score. But I'm going to stay away from Dern. Really, you're basically chasing a first-round submission. I know that's how Cooper usually loses her fights. But that's the dice roll I'm willing to take. What about you?
Yeah, it's interesting because Cooper loses all of her fights by submission. That's actually a real stat. She's 3-3. Her 3 pro losses are by submission. I think all in the first round. So path to victory, certainly there. But when you look back at that, it's only almost half deceiving in that her first pro loss against Aspen Ladd. The note there is Aspen Ladd, A, is good. And B, Aspen Ladd can't even make 135. And Amanda Cooper is fighting at 115 pounds. So that's a much bigger girl. Her other 2 losses, Tatiana Suarez, wrestling machine.
Could be the champion in this division.
Potentially.
In a few years.
Yeah, she fights a little more, hopefully. But I mean,
she's got a fight coming up against
she's very injury prone, so we just got to keep her on the right track.
Chile, it's coming up.
Keep her on the right track. But all I'm saying is that she's a fantastic wrestler, pretty good grappler. She takes her down, submits her. Cynthia Calvillo, same thing. She's a good wrestler. She's a good grappler. She submits her in the first round. Dern's not that level of wrestler, so I agree with you there that if she struggles to get this fight to the ground, Amanda Cooper's a much better striker. She comes from a boxing background. She's very athletic. She's kind of good everywhere, not exactly great anywhere, but she's basically like a 3-3 gatekeeper for the division. It's hard to be a gatekeeper with only 6 pro fights. But that's kind of where she's at. If you can beat her, then you know what? You're probably not all that bad. As we've seen from her last 3, her opponents that have defeated her, they're actually pretty good. If she's going to beat you and you're one of the Anna Elmoses of the world,
or the Angela Maganyas.
Or the Angela Magana and Anna Elmos. Like, think about that for a minute. Those are her victories in the UFC. So Dern's a little bit of a level above that. Even if she can't take the fight down consistently, she's probably only got to get the fight down once in a while. She can get a trip takedown. If she can pull guard, if she can end up like even Dylan Danis in his terrible Bellator debut where it's like, whatever, man, I'm going to flop on my back. Eventually, this is going to lead to a grappling exchange. And I'm going to submit you because I'm a much higher level. Then Dern can do all that stuff. She's coming off that last fight with Ashley Yoder, and it hasn't really been all that long in between fights.
She's left her gym since then. There's always been rumors that she's kind of lazy in the gym.
Dude, 100%. And actually, it's funny. So the only thing funnier is that she's got this fake accent. I'm sure you've noticed.
Of course.
So if you haven't noticed, I think the video is called like the evolution
Everyone noticed.
of Mackenzie Dern.
She had a translator. She speaks. She's from California. She had a translator at her last.
She's from
fight.
Arizona, and she's like born there. Like she's been there since she was like 3 years old. Whatever it is.
It was very strange.
Yeah, but just like it shows you like 2010 in her English, and all the way until now, and it's like, oh my god, like she's just got a fake ass accent. But one other thing that's interesting in that video is like in 2012 or something, she's like, a lot of the times I don't like going to the gym, but people always tell me like there's somebody out there that's training harder than you. So you get the impression like, dude, that was 6 years ago, and she self-admittedly doesn't like going to the gym. It
hasn't been long since a bad performance.
Yeah, and then interviewing her prior to this fight, she's like, well, after this fight, I'd like to take some time off and just hang out. Like, she don't like to grind. And John Crouch, who is a gangster, like he has a very good success rate with taking mid-level talent and turning them into pretty decent fighters. She's an upper-level talent. You'd think he'd be able to do something with her. Kicking out someone who's on a pay-per-view main card 6 fights into her pro career, it doesn't really make much sense. But here's a smart guy that's like, you know what? I don't want to be the guy that took this jiu-jitsu.
She's a bad example for the rest of the room that she's not grinding. And Brian Barberina's over here.
Benson Henderson and Brian Barberina.
Like all the people who come from that gym are hard workers.
They're all grinders, dude. That's how they go from mid-level
Which means that it was probably a good matchup for her to be in that area, but she didn't really want to be there.
Yeah, fair. And you know what, dude? The fade moment is coming for her eventually. I just don't know if
may
this
not
is
be
the
this spot,
right? I mean, she's clearly set up to win here. They're putting
Are
her on
you gonna roster on DraftKings though, 9100? Because you're banking on that first round submission.
I'm gonna take a shot.
You need that first round submission.
I'm gonna take a shot on it, not on every line.
She's not gonna score much on the feet. Like her striking is not gonna score all that much.
So if you look at her last LFA fight prior to signing with the UFC, she's working on her striking, and it looks pretty abysmal, dude. And then in her UFC debut, she's taken on Ashley Yoder, who had been to the Pan American Games for Jiu-Jitsu, obviously. I think she's like won a gold at brown belt or something. She's at Dan Henderson's Ultimate Training Center. She knows how to wrestle. She's a pretty strong girl. She doesn't know that she can take this girl down. And even if she does take this girl down, well, she's a grappler as well. So I'm going to try to work on my striking. Problem is, her striking still is pretty spotty. She's new at this. She's probably not in the gym like Brian Ortega, grinding every day, turning mediocre striking to flaring striking to actual bona fide proper technical striking. She's not doing all those things. But heading into this fight, I've seen a couple interviews with her where she's like, I don't really want to work on my striking in this fight. I think I'm just going to try to take to the ground. This girl's a former boxer. This girl has a kickboxing base. This girl's going to want to strike with me. I'm just going to try to get this fight to the ground. And that's the path to victory. So for the 91, I'll take it. The other thing with Amanda Cooper is, to me, she seems supremely talented, but she probably knows her ground game's not the level as some of these girls that she's fighting.
So she'll be fighting scared?
Yeah, but not scared. She's just hesitant to throw three-piece combinations. Like, she's a volume puncher. She's not a one-punch power puncher. She's a volume puncher. And if she's not throwing combos because she's thinking 1-2, get out of the pocket instead of finishing off with the left hook, instead of pushing this girl backwards, who knows? She'll probably be circling around on the outside more than pushing forward and making her pay and punishing her. And then the other issue is that I think she's mentally in her own head, where she's now thinking about the takedown, where she's now panicking when she is on the ground, and that's why she's leaving these submissions open for her opponent. So I feel like Dern at some point is going to catch her. Fade Dern moving forward unless she shows you something, but I just don't know that this is the spot that I'm finally going to go against her.
We got Johnny Hands of Stone Lineker taking on Brian Kelleher. Lineker 9,000 on DraftKings, minus 250 on the betting line. Brian Kelleher 7,200 plus 210. I promised myself last fight after Kelleher got that win over Barao.
Killed him.
I'm like, I got to start giving this guy some respect.
No doubt.
Now, Sean Shelby and those guys do me dirty by putting him up against Johnny Hands of Stone Lineker. These guys are actually pretty similar in terms of their style. Get right up in your face and just bomb. And like that's basically how Kelleher beat Barao, is just like, don't give him any room. Just kind of keep backing him up, and landing those hands. And Lineker is the guy who like basically created this style in the modern era. You know, I'm never gonna pick against Johnny Lineker. The best thing about rostering Lineker on DraftKings is the guy's chin is so good. So it's like, even if he loses the fight, we're getting 3 rounds out of him. And when he's up there, he's throwing hard hooks and stuff. Every single one of his strikes that lands are basically a significant strike.
No,
so you're
of course. He doesn't throw jabs, Paul. And even when he does, it's more like a left cross from he's always throwing heat. So I hear you.
So I feel bad going against Kelleher again here. Maybe he pulls it off. Maybe he'll continue to kind of punish me for underestimating him, but it's the wrong guy. It's Johnny Lineker. Johnny Lineker does the exact same thing that Kelleher does. We're in Brazil. These two guys are going to go to war. This is probably the funnest fight on the card, in my opinion. Johnny Lineker all day.
Yeah, just one more point there on John Lineker's chin is that TJ Dillashaw broke his jaw, and Lineker seems so unfazed. Yeah. Like, he's getting his ass kicked, sure, but
of course, against the best guy in the world,
against
the
most
champion.
dynamic, the most dynamic guy in the world. But being dynamic is kind of the way to beat him. And then Lineker is not nearly as smooth. He's not nearly as good with his footwork. But I don't know, man. I mean, on a fight so far, Nunes, such a big favorite, but, we are taking her. Jacare, slight favorite. I am taking him. Dern, she's a favorite. I'm taking her.
Trust her.
I'm going to go Kelleher here for my first dog pick. I just feel like he might have the tools to beat John Lineker, and that's John Lineker likes a good old-fashioned war, but he likes knocking guys out in the midst of said war. His last 3 fights have actually all gone to decision, and his last fight in particular against Chito Vera, I mean, he's like a minus 550, minus 600, and a good fight. He certainly, I believe, wins all 3 rounds, but not a great performance out of him. If you fight him the way that John Dodson fight him, which is in and out of the pocket and tag him, he throws those big hooks. He winds up on those big hooks. But his feet are like concrete, like his hands of stone, it's like feet of stone. His feet are always planted, and he just moves laterally trying to cut you off. But Kelleher will move forward. Kelleher will throw a lot more punches. Kelleher,
you don't move forward against Johnny Lineker.
Yeah, fair.
When you do, you end up getting backed up because his chin. He knows his chin is gonna hold up longer than yours.
Yeah, but he is
going to move forward constantly.
Yeah, but eventually that's gonna catch up.
Like Rob Font is a guy who will move forward sometimes. It's just like Johnny Lineker makes everybody fight off their back foot. That's the key. Is like, are you able to fight off your back foot? Dodson, yes. Dillashaw, yes. Anybody who wants to try to come forward, you aren't doing it. You better be able to fight off your back foot and go off on angles. And maybe Kelleher can do that to him. I'm not saying that he can't, but you've changed, man.
No, well, I'm just
against
saying,
my boy.
I know. But your boy literally has no reach, right? Missing weight at 125 were the fucking good old days, dude. If he missed weight at 125, you knew you were making kaish off John Lineker. Then he comes to 135, and he's not bad, but like his wins over Francisco Rivera and Michael McDonald, and like those are some of his big. Rob Font is actually not bad, but he hasn't really gotten a signature victory at 135 pounds, in my opinion. He's looked okay, but taking all that damage.
Dodson.
Nah, he lost to Dodson. Well, yeah, okay, you're right. They gave him the fight. I just didn't really agree with it. Yeah, okay, it was a close fight. I just felt like he got outlanded.
And he did win.
But he's got short ass arms. He's pretty damn slow. And yeah, okay, it'd be hard to move forward against him. But that's because most guys don't need to move forward against him if you want to use your range. He's always moving forward on you. Backpedal, use that striking. I don't know that Kelleher has the footwork of the 2 aforementioned guys that have cleanly defeated a guy like John Lineker, but I think he's got a better cardio. He's not going to get caught in that John Lineker guillotine, which is the only submission John Lineker has in his arsenal. And if he just avoids those big shots, and speaking of those big shots, like Hedin Barao allegedly has big shots, and he just marched him down. He compromised him in a position where this guy's tired of moving around, and he just bombs him with strikes. Like, he absolutely owned him. When you watch TJ Dillashaw versus Barao, there's a guy that can move well, and he completely pieces up a guy like Hedin Barao who's slower, plodding, and a big power puncher. What Kelleher did to Barao was almost like reminiscent of that. Like, he looked really good against him. He did to Hedin Barao, who the only other person that's ever done that to him has, being TJ Dillashaw. That's what he did to him. He beat him more convincingly than Jeremy Stevens beat him. He looked really good. So I can't keep doubting him. And not that I keep doubting him, but I had Hedin Barao in that last fight. It was an eye-opener. Kelleher wants it, man. This guy's hungry. And this guy's probably a lot less shop-worn than John Lineker. You know why we know John Lineker has a legendary chin? Because he's always getting hit, man. He doesn't have particularly good defense. He doesn't move his head. He's just got a head of steel. Eventually, that shit catches up with you. And I know he's younger than Kelleher, but who knows, man? We've seen a lot of shop-worn Brazilians that never make it to 30.
AJ and middleweight legends, I guess you could say, go down in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. When we got Lyoto the Dragon Machida taking on Vitor Belfort, 8,900 for Machida, 7,300 for Belfort, minus 275 and plus 235 respectively. Who we got?
I'm gonna have to go with Lyoto Machida. This is a fight that I honestly do feel both guy could win, mostly because both guy doesn't really have punch resistance. And if you're Lyoto Machida, you've traditionally that sharp counter puncher, karate background, good amount of power. If you hit Vitor, he's going down. Vitor, not TNT Vitor anymore, but I still have to believe that he's got to have enough power in his hands that if he hits Machida go down. The problem is one of them actually seems to have cardio, and the other one does not. And that's Lyoto Machida. Like, he can go 5 rounds if he needs to. He can take you to deep waters. He's in phenomenal shape all the time. His body, even though his chin may be gone, even though his body might be breaking down, and even though he failed at USADA test, I just feel like he's probably way healthier than Vitor Belfort. Like, his body's probably not shutting down in multiple areas. I don't think he's got kidney failure like Vitor Belfort.
We did less steroids.
Well, he did stuff that was like allowed, and then they wrote in the rules. He'd been taking that supplement for like 6 years.
He basically
he gave
himself up. They said, "Have you taken anything on this list?" And he's like, "Oh, DHEA, whatever."
Yeah,
and
you buy that stuff at Walgreens.
There's no real conclusive results that like that's a huge advantage to be having. So he kind of gets a bit of a bad rep. Vitor.
He's like,
Vitor, we know.
I did a little TRT and maybe some EPO.
Vitor, what he did, we know what he did. Like the pictures of him during TRT tour, that era. Woo, that guy is shredded, and he's getting older and just getting more shredded, and like he had veins coming out of all parts of his body. Like, dude, Vitor was on the good stuff.
Not only that, that's him at 185. He looked awesome like that. You go back to the pictures of
John Jones
fight. Holy shit, dude. Dude, he looks like a G.I. Joe villain. Like, he is so shredded. He could have just entered a bodybuilding contest instead and at least placed.
The way it is with him now, huge. It's like he's probably got like 3-4 minutes where he's dangerous. I know that he won against Nate Marquardt.
Yeah, but that was a bad fight.
Exactly.
Dude.
I mean, like really he won his last fight and he went to decision, which like nobody. I think like that fight goes to decision was like a plus like 850 or something like insane.
Yeah, like and I know some people that actually scored the fight for Marquardt. I thought Vitor did enough.
I did too.
But when you're not particularly
knocking out Nate Marquardt,
you're not. So people say, well, dude, he could catch Lyoto. Lyoto's chinny. He could have caught Marquardt theoretically too, but he did not. He's not that same guy anymore. Vitor Belfort is one of those strange cats in the game of MMA because he's pro debut in 1997. This guy's seen the beginning of mixed martial arts. He's seen the rise of mixed martial arts. He's seen the death of mixed martial arts. He's seen the Zuffa purchase, the resurrection of martial arts, and now those like middle days where it seems to be slightly on the decline. They're struggling to find their place. But what I'm trying to say is the guy's been around for absolutely ever. There's very few guys that have pro fights dating back to 1997.
Sure.
Fun fact we'll get to later, like say Oleinik in 1996. So Vitor's been around for a long time, and like all that wear and tear of those knockout losses, all the wear and tear of those injuries, all the wear and tear of being on crank for so long in your Pride days, in your UFC days, literally everywhere the guy's fought, he's just been so seemingly gassed out of his mind. By now, his gotta be falling apart. Now, there's some fun fights for him. I think him and Michael Bisping rematch makes a lot of sense.
That's what I've been calling for. But apparently Bisping doesn't want it because he's just like, no, that guy's a cheater. Why would I want to go out against a cheater?
Yeah, exactly.
Good on him.
But Lyoto Machida, he took some fairly big shots with Anders in his last fight, and he stood. I thought he won that fight, and I had money on Anders.
I thought Anders won.
I get why
I thought it was pretty clear that Anders won, but like he competed against somebody much better than Nate Marquardt. And it was competitive.
It went 5 rounds.
And it was.
Dude, he won the first 2 in my opinion. Lost 3 and 4, and rallied back for the 5th. Like we're talking about Vitor has 4 minutes in him.
I agree.
And Lyoto Machida won a 5th round in a fight that he needed to win the 5th round in order to win.
I'm not sure what Vitor by knockout is, but like if you were going to make the punt on Vitor Belfort, like you might as well just take the knockout because I don't see him winning a decision here.
Vitor is not in it to win it anymore. Remember when he pulled guard against Jacare? What the fuck could you do that for? He's just kind of going through the motions. He's getting paid some good cash. I get to be on a UFC pay-per-view, Kurt Jerker, in front of my hometown fans. Why not? But the guy looks
Probably
old.
Doesn't have very
seems
many.
To be fighting old. And I don't know. I think Vitor Belfort at this point, like I said,
he's got to go to Ryzen, get back on the vitamins, and fight. Like Mirko Krokop over there.
No, that's a bad idea, okay? He should go over there.
No, but like get him back on the vitamins. We want TRT tour back.
Yeah,
you can only do that in Japan, so let's do it.
Back. Yeah, fair enough.
All right, we got Carl Roberson taking on Cesar Mutanch Ferreira. We got Roberson 8,600 on DraftKings, 7,600 for Ferreira, minus 140. Roberson plus 120 for Ferreira. We always talk about Ferreira every single fight. The guy's a little bit more calculated, a little bit smarter. He knows that his chin sucks.
Yeah.
But he fights pretty smart. This is an interesting fight. Just from the standpoint of, I imagine if Ferreira is able to get this fight to the ground, I'm sure Roberson's working on that part of his game. But this guy's a kickboxer, and we've seen some improvements from the guy. He won a fight by submission.
Half of his pro wins are by submission. He doesn't have a whole lot.
So
of
like
pro
he
wins.
has the offensive game, but like if you go down to the ground against a legitimate black belt like Ferreira finds that head and arm choke pretty quick once he gets down there.
Yeah.
Like that's his bread and butter. And Roberson seems to have the power that it doesn't take very much, and we've seen a lot of other people do it. You can shut off Mutanch's switch, and it doesn't really take all that much. Very, very interesting fight. A fight that I think you should target on DraftKings. I would say have a little bit both sides because I'm not sure how it's going to go. It's either Roberson catches Ferreira, knocks him out, or Ferreira maybe kind of dodges, avoids, and maybe second round, third round finds a takedown. And I think when he gets to the ground, he has a big advantage. Like, I can see this fight going both ways. I don't really have a solid pick on either side, at least at this point in the week. But it is a fight that I want to be targeting on DraftKings. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, you could literally just take the Vitor Belfort breakdown and apply it to his prototype version 2.0, Cesar Mutanch. I got to go with Robertson. And I actually like Robertson a fair little bit here. Cesar Ferreira, one thing I'll give this guy is that, yeah, he was like Vitor in the beginning. So jacked, fairly young Brazilian guy, very flashy with his strikes. He hits you, he knocks you out, and kind of similar to Vitor Belfort, his chin left him. Once his chin left him, he's getting tagged. Sam Alvey completely shuts the light off. Masvidal, CB Dalloway, all these guys touch him. They're not just touching him when he's getting knocked out. Knocked out, Paul. Like, he is completely out of it. So unlike Vitor, where it's like, okay, I've got 4 minutes of striking in me. I could go out there and try to get that knockout. I'm a black belt. I'm a fairly strong guy. Why not get these guys to the ground and use that submission game? And he's done a fairly good job of that. The thing is that for me personally, looking at this fight, is Oluwole Bombase. That's like the first victory he picked up here. That guy's a good striker, terrible grappler, not particularly good in the clinch, right? When he took on Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith's a long, gangly guy, got nice elbows, but he's not physically strong or all that dangerous for me in the clinch against a shorter, stronger guy. When you look at the Nate Marquardt fight, the guy that we're talking about, Vitor struggling against Nate Marquardt, this guy didn't look good against Nate Marquardt, which is very hard to ignore. Nate Marquardt, not all that good in the clinch. Roberson is really good in the clinch, man. He's
you know who
very
else
long,
hurt him in the
he's
clinch is Masvidal with that inside elbow.
Yeah, and even CB Dalloway, it's like there's no distance between them. He just fades a couple punches back and then hits this guy and knocks him out.
Fair.
Masvidal, it's like a single collar tie. He pushes him back and hits him with the right hand, knocks him out. I think Roberson can do the exact same thing. Roberson's a former glory level kickboxer. He's had a fight against Jerome Lobanner in kickboxing. That's at heavyweight. Jerome Lobanner walks around at 250. In his MMA career, he's fought at 205 and now 185 pounds. Shit, dude, that's not bad. He's big and he's strong for that weight class. But above all else, when you get these kickboxers taking on a chinny guy, it seems real easy. Oh, the kickboxer just got to touch him. And what has Mutanche been doing? Taking these guys down, using that submission. But Robertson's full-time out of New Jersey, and his primary two training partners helping him get ready for this fight have been Corey Anderson and Dave Branch. So I really can't imagine finding two better guys that are good wrestlers and are awesome on the ground. Both of those guys are far better than Cesar Mutanche, in my opinion. Anderson's not as good on the ground. Maybe he's not a black belt. Way better wrestler. And Dave Branch is a better wrestler and better on the ground. So get ready with these guys. Grind with these guys. And when you go out, keep the fight standing long enough to land an elbow. Keep this fight standing long enough to tag this guy up, and you'll put this guy down. So I got Robertson. And then the fact is, $8,600. Price is really not all that bad. He's got potential for a first-round knockout, but he's got potential for a second and a third-round knockout too. So I'm going to take that play on him. Minus 140. Not bad. He hasn't lost yet, and I worry about those guys because they're going to get shown eventually. But I think he looks good here. I think he matches up well, and he should be able to get that victory. So bring it home for me.
Junior Albini, 8,200 on DraftKings. Alexei Oleinik, 8,000. Minus 150 Albini, plus 130 Oleinik. The one thing that is most hilarious about this fight is, have a look there. Why is Albini's head so disproportionate to the size of his body?
Because he's a baby.
The guy was literally wearing a diaper, and he literally shit his pants against Arlovsky in that fight. And we called that. We actually called that one right here. It's just like, okay, sure, this guy got the knockout against Tim Johnson, and he was able to land the big one. And Tim Johnson had always been kind of a durable guy, but just like we didn't really see all that much. This fight is actually kind of scary in a sense because Oleinik's getting old. This guy was originally like a middleweight who's kind of just 40 years old now and just like I'm not cutting weight anymore. So the guy kind of comes in at like 235, 240, and we were kind of seeing him slip a little bit. It's like even when he gets it to the ground and he finds the position, he's always looking for that Ezekiel choke, you know.
No, the scarf hold.
The scarf hold.
Yeah, he'll take guys out, man.
He's starting to, like, he's slipping on that a bunch these days when he gets down. Maybe if he gets Albini into that position, he closes it out. I could also see this being a really low-scoring heavyweight stinker fight. And
That is a
kinda
possibility.
scares me.
That is a possibility.
Because the one thing about Oleinik is that he can take a lot of damage.
Can he ever take a lot of damage?
So Albini could be able to tag him up on the feet, but you know how these heavyweight guys go. They're not in great shape. They're in great shape for somebody who's 265 pounds. Don't get me wrong. But when these things go past the 7-minute mark, these things go to the decision. So this is a fight that is a total toss-up to me. I don't really have a really hot take on either side. Do you?
Yeah, I feel like I almost have to go Albini against maybe my better judgment, but Alexei Oleinik, like, just think about this for a moment. As I mentioned, 1996 pro debut, where he won a one-night tournament in Ukraine at 176 pounds. You know how long ago that was, Paul? This guy's been around for a lifetime. But in a card that features the likes of Cesar Ferreira, Vitor Belfort, Lyoto Machida, Talis Leites, Alexei Oleinik has the honor of being the most shot-porn guy in the card. Like, this is a card of a lot of aging veterans, but here's a guy who's 40 years old.
He's fought like 75 times.
Yeah, you mentioned he's getting old. He was old at 35.
Yeah.
He was old when Neil Grove iced him in less than a minute in Bellator.
But it's heavyweight. You can be old and still kind of compete.
Yeah, and you know what? Because heavyweight there's such a disparity in talented young up-and-comers that he's got these old man submissions. Like the scarf hold, basically a neck crank. Dude, such an old man submission.
Nobody else does
the
that.
Ezekiel he hit on Pesta? Come on, man. Travis Brown fight, I was impressed, but that's Brown's MO. Start good, fade out, get taken down, and get taken, you know, whatever. You want to knock him out, you want to submit him, whatever you need to do it on the ground with Travis Brown. So it's not as if Alexei Oleinik's fighting the worst guys. It's just that he's relying on those old man techniques to kind of pull one over on them. But what I'm noticing now is that starting with that Daniel Malanchuk fight, I think that's kind of what you're alluding to when you mentioned, even when he does get the fight to the ground, sometimes he's not snagging it up the way he used to. He's got 40 pro wins by submission. That's crazy. But at this point, can he submit higher upper end guys? And Junior Albini's not necessarily that, but the last fight with Oleinik was the first time in his entire career that I've been following him that I thought to myself,
this guy's done.
Fuck, is this guy looking old, man? He is very, very slow. He's very plodding. And he gets away with that because he is so durable, that he can take a shot and keep going forward.
Yeah.
Now, Curtis Blades is a guy that we talk about, guys at heavyweight don't have great cardio. This guy's got great cardio. He's very athletic.
Massive.
He painted.
Massive, strong, good takedowns, and good cardio. That's going to get you a long ways in the heavyweight division.
For sure. So maybe it's, okay, he fought a top 10 guy, a guy that's going to, sky's the limit for Blades,
you know? A top 5.
Yeah, it could be a top 5
future
guy
for like perennial.
Yeah, maybe you can write him a pass. But the thing is that, as I talked about at the top of the show, you kind of want that bigger, faster, more explosive athlete. Albini's,
are you going to call the big baby a bigger, faster?
Well, Albini's 13 years younger.
Athlete?
He's 13 years younger. He's definitely faster. He's just got to make sure
athlete.
he keeps this fight standing.
Yeah.
Timothy Johnson didn't try to wrestle in that fight. That irked me about him because Johnson always wants to use his boxing nowadays, and that's the reason why he's cut. You're a big herky-jerky wrestler from South Dakota. Please try to get this fight to the ground. But he wouldn't. He stood with Albini, and Albini knocked him out. But the guy's got a great chin on him. Against Arlovsky, everyone's just thinking, wow, you knocked out Timothy Johnson. Just land something in Arlovsky. Thing is, he doesn't throw anything in that fight. He literally stands in front of Arlovsky and he waits. The difference between Arlovsky and Oleinik is that Arlovsky is 10 times faster than Alexei Oleinik. You can conceivably lose exchanges to Andrei Arlovsky based on him having faster hands. Guy's a striker. Guy's actually a pretty quick heavyweight. Oleinik's not. He's got like 4 knockouts on his on his record, sorry. So outside of the Jared Rosholt knockout, and he dropped Anthony Hamilton before submitting him, he's not known for his power. He's more so, I'll move forward, take out whatever you can dish to try to get this fight to the ground. And when I get this fight on the ground, I'm going to use a power move to try to submit you. If it doesn't work, I don't know. Albini's at home. He's super embarrassed because the last fight, A, was terrible, and B, he wore a diaper. So the guy needs some redemption here at home against a guy that's going to stand in front of him and probably get tired after the first round. Not exactly known for his takedowns. I think Albini's got to get the job done. I'm not playing on DK, but my pick would be Junior Albini in this situation.
Moving on down the card, we got Davi Ramos taking on Nick Hein. Davi Ramos, 8,500 in DraftKings. Hein can be had for 7,700, minus 140, plus 120 respectively. Who you got?
Yeah, I'm not going to go out of my way and say I'm big on this dog play, but I need another dog here, and I think Hein's got a shot. The reason I'm saying that is that Davi Ramos, we all know that he's awesome on the ground. 2015 ADCC champion. high-end jiu-jitsu black belt. His fights in the UFC, you haven't really been able to see that all that much. I mean, yeah, he's coming off a win by submission over Chris Grutzmacher, and then against Sergio Moraes, like, what are you going to do? Use your jiu-jitsu? Not going to happen. Turns out to a really terrible striking match. But in both those fights, you saw a lot more of his striking and his cardio than you did of his jiu-jitsu. And I just don't know that I'm totally sold. Prior to that, his only losses against Dave Rickles, which is another half-rugged guy that just kept the fight standing, was able to outpunch him. Sergio Moraes' fight, he did take it on short notice, but again, keeps the fight standing, and his striking is not all that good. And then in his most recent affair against Grutzmacher had spots in that fight. And obviously, he's not a bad fighter. He's a guy that we backed in his last victory over Joe Lozon, but he was kind of getting hit, and he was kind of getting tired, and he gets the submission in the third round, but up until then, it was kind of what you'd look at as being a close fight. So I'm just not huge on Davy Ramos. The flip side to that was Nick Hein, been off for nearly 2 years now, hasn't done a whole lot of fighting, but he's a judo black belt, and he's got a 90% takedown defense rate inside of the UFC.
And he's got good cardio. This guy can go 3 rounds.
But he's hard to take down.
Yes.
So Ramos is going to have a reach advantage, and Ramos is working on his striking, but if this ends up just being a striking match, it's going to be greasy. It'll be tight. I actually think Nick Hein's a slightly better striker. The issue is that Nick Hein also has slightly lower punch output. So Davy Ramos might just sling out some bullshit
And we're
strikes.
in Brazil.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. You look at Sergio Moraes versus Tim Means. It's a Tim Means, and this is not going to look like that. But that's a Tim Means victory. But like Moraes just does enough with flicking out bullshit, as Robin Black would say, flim-flam, that they just give it to him. And I'm not 100% convinced here that Davy Ramos might not just get gifted a decision. But Nick Hein's got the tools to pull off this victory here. Keep this fight standing. Work this guy. Great cardio, as you mentioned. And if for whatever reason you want to secure a takedown simply just near the end of the round to try to, he's not going to submit you in 30 seconds, take him down, win the round, try to secure a round based on points, that's a possibility for him. You wouldn't want to spend a whole lot of time on the ground, but yeah, keep this fight standing, outwork him. I think Hein could pull it out. Plus 120 is not huge, and I don't see Nick Hein getting a finish. So buyer beware. He's only 7,700, but that'd be more of a cash game play.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say that. It's like if you're gonna play Hein, I think it's a cash game play.
Yeah.
I could see the argument for playing Ramos because Ramos is probably going to be trying to look for that takedown. If he does get it to the ground, he's going to be looking for an early submission, right? You would think. But like I could see this fight being very, very low scoring. I don't think you necessarily have to play this at all. If you're playing 100 lineups, like you're probably going to scatter in some, and our preferred play would be Nick Hein in this spot. But if you're only going to play like 5-6 lineups, like I think you kind of just avoid this fight altogether.
Yeah, kind of avoid it. And my last point on Hein is that take a look back at his fight with James Vick. He loses that fight, goes 3 rounds, going 3 hard rounds, and James Vick's got to count for something, but he drops Vick 3 times in the first round. Striking is really not all that bad. We just haven't seen a whole lot of him lately, so maybe he's going to be one of those sleepers on the card. We'll have to see.
Zaleski dos Santos takes on Sean Strickland. Both guys 8,100 on DraftKings, minus 135 Zaleski dos Santos, plus 115 for Strickland. I had to call him Zaleski on the little board that we have for the graphic because Zaleski dos Santos just didn't fit, man.
I thought Strickland was 19-2. I don't know where that draw came from.
Yeah, I go off of the UFC's website. That's what they call these things.
Right, I just can't remember at the top of my head.
We used to look at like Tapology. Tapology usually has the best, most accurate records for any guys. I just go on the UFC's website. It's just there.
I think DraftKings had him
if
as
we're gonna
19-1,
nitpick wins and losses,
so
I think you were
even got his
saying
right
that what's her name? That Cooper was 3-3. The UFC's website has her as 4-3. We know like how they like to like give people wins or take away loss. It is what it is. It doesn't really matter the grand scheme of things. The record's just a record.
Sure.
This is obviously a tightly contested affair. 2 kind of shining prospects in this division that have shown a lot of promise. Very, very tough to say. Zaleski is a really, really underappreciated striker, and Strickland is he's got that prototypical kind of body and like a kind of guy that's like seems to like he's grown up with mixed martial arts, where he's kind of good at everything, but his jab is very good. He's super long, and he's able to use that against a lot of guys.
No doubt.
It's a really tough fight to call, and I could see it being high volume, but another fight that I don't think you necessarily have to play on DraftKings. Where you stand on the fight between these two guys?
Yeah, super mixed emotions. It's almost a case of what my eyes tell me versus what my ears tell me. And what my ears tell me is that Sean Strickland is a stud. Guys that I know that train with him just rave about this guy. How he smashes everybody in the gym. He looks like he's going to be a contender for the title. And then come fight night, he kind of draws a blank some of the times. That last fight with Corey McGee, not exactly a very sexy fight for the old resume. Beating Corey McGee, sure, that's a tough one, but he didn't look particularly good. And, he addresses it on the mic in the post-fight after fighting McGee is that I got to get to the guy that I am in the gym out here. And so he was training at Dan Henderson's gym with Sam Alvey, Chris Curtis, obviously Henderson when he's in town, Ashley Yoder being at the gym, not sure they train together, just saying, good little setup, mostly good strong wrestlers want to keep the fight standing, use some of those strikes. But since his last fight, I think he kind of felt he needed to get out of his comfort zone, and I see he's been going down to King's MMA and working a lot with Kelvin Gastelum, getting ready for that fight. Zaleski dos Santos and Kelvin Gastelum, not exactly the same fighter, but all the same is that train with different bodies, train with different guys, train with a stand-up guy like Kelvin Gastelum that can give you problems and maybe just, bring out that talent in the octagon. So that's what my ears are telling me, is that this guy's supremely talented. He's 19-2 for a record. Like, think about how difficult of a record that is to attain. That is the best record out of any fighter on this card currently, save for maybe if you consider 13-0 for Alberto Mina a better record. But I don't. I like to see a loss on that record. Shows what kind of character you are. He hasn't fought exactly the best level guys, and occasionally he looks really good. He looked really good against Alex Garcia, but he also gets gun shy sometimes and kind of stands in front of you. And you don't want to get gun shy and stand in front against Zaleski dos Santos, because the guy throws heat. He likes to throw heat. If Strickland puts the pressure on him, takes him down, and uses his grappling, then that's the way to beat him. Fight him the way you fought Tom Breeze. You'll beat this guy. I just don't know that he's not going to get down there in a foreign country, getting zapped from this plane ride down that he only took actually a couple days ago, and then standing in front of a guy that's very explosive, very dynamic, on a 3-fight winning streak. Hasn't really been looking all that bad lately. So it does make me worried. I'm going to kind of avoid this fight as far as DraftKings goes, even though I think 8,100 is a very fair price. I'm very kind of torn on it.
Zaleski
I'm tempted to have some shares.
Is my preferred play, if I have to say it. Just based on volume, the fact that you're getting line value, minus 135 plus 115, you're getting line value on Zaleski dos Santos, and we're in Brazil. So if this is a close competitive fight on the feet, let's be honest, Brazilian's gonna Brazil.
Yeah.
These things happen.
Yeah.
So that would be what would lead me there, but another fight that I don't think you really have to target.
The other thing, in my opinion, for that one in particular is that Sean Strickland's only 2 pro losses coming at the hands of Kamaru Usman, who actually, and actually landed some big shots on him, and he took them. And his prior losses against Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Two guys that are
landed some big shots, and he took them.
Two guys that are at the top of the 170-pound division.
So his chin checks out as far as I'm concerned. And Dos Santos kind of relies on the fact like he can hurt you and make this, like Max Payne Griffin was having success with him using that range, but the chin didn't check out for him. He got wobbled a whole lot. And even though it's a war of a fight, obviously Zaleski dos Santos is going to prevail in that situation. But against Strickland, the guy is longer. He's a rangy guy. He keeps his hands sharp. His chin is magnificent, and his grappling is actually pretty good. We just yet to see it. So I'm going to lean with another dog here play in Sean Strickland, but it's tempting both sides, really. I think both guys got some merit to them.
Warley Alves, 8,800 on DraftKings. Sultan Aliev, 7,400. Minus 245. Alves, plus 205. Aliev, we got?
Yeah, this is one of those fights that kind of worries me, only because you want to go with the obvious choice, the obvious favorite, minus 245, Warley Alves, 8,800, a little bit expensive on DK. But here's a guy that is going to be a lot faster than Aliev. He's got much better striking than Aliev does, and he's got that guillotine choke. So if Aliev kind of sleeps on one of those takedowns and leaves his neck out there, this guy will grab a hold of your neck and he will submit you. That's his patented move. He's only 27 years old, so even though he has not looked great in the past.
Who's he training with now, though? Because him and Jacare used to train together.
Yeah, because he was one of those X-Gym guys. But, I know that he's been spending some time for this camp in particular in Brazil because, it being in Brazil. But like I said, only 27 years old. I think you think of a guy like that won the Ultimate Fighter seemingly a long time ago, that's had a decent amount of fights in the UFC, has beaten some good guys like Colby Covington and Nordine Taleb, both with the guillotine choke. Also a win over Joban I didn't agree with, but all the same, he's fighting some good guys here.
His gas tank is the issue, though.
His gas tank's the issue, and the guys that have beaten him up pretty bad, you know what? They go to the wrestling. Like Brian Barberina came in as a massive underdog and just grinded the guy. The guy tries to choke out Barberina with the guillotine in the first round, doesn't, and then just gets grinded down to a nub. He takes on a tough grappler like Aliev. Who's to say he's not going to gas out after the first round? And then Aliev takes you down. The guy's a 2-time European Sambo world champion. He's a 2-time
He's just gonna hold you
world
there,
Sambo champion.
He's going to take you down and just hold you there.
He's got 800 ways to take you down, and when he takes you down, he's very heavy. He's terrible standing, and that is where Warlley Alves is going to have to keep this fight standing and use his, apparently he comes from a kickboxing base. Apparently he's had a lot of success in amateur kickboxing and Muay Thai, but he looks like he's very sloppy with some winging hooks for me standing. His last fight in Poland, he's taking on a short-nosed replacement who is unheralded and is basically on this card because he's Polish and they're in Poland. And he did not look all that good. But I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt in that he is only 27 and he should be getting better. But boy, oh boy, when I see Aliev, I see that as a parlay buster. He's one of those guys that's like, that apple pie looks mighty tasty, time for a shit. And that's what he'll pursue. He'll pursue takedowns, grindy cage work, exactly what he did against Bojan Velikovic, and hey dude, it's actually kind of half effective. So this is kind of a stay away from me.
I understand that. The thing about Aliev is that he's one of those guys that kind of likes to... He's kind of like, I like to say that he's DraftKings cancer. Like, this guy wants to slow down the pace of the fight, make it real greasy. So, I think Warlley Alves either gets him out of there early, which makes Warlley Alves a very good GPP play. 8,800, he's underneath
and
all of these other people at the top.
Kenny
It allows
Roberson
you to do a lot of other
quick
stuff. And if he gets a finish in like round 1 or even like into round 2, he's paying off that bill. Or Aliev makes this a real slow, dirty fight.
An Aliev type fight.
But like, I don't think you really want Aliev. I don't really see the benefit of having Aliev in your lineup. He either gets gassed out or gets taken out early or somehow pulls off a decision, but it's an ugly one that doesn't score all that many points. So I'm going to play Warlley Alves in some GPPs. No Aliev whatsoever. Let's move on. We got Jack the Joker Hermansson taking on Thales Leites. 8,300 for Hermansson, 7,900 for Leites, minus 155 Hermansson, plus 135 Leites. You're kind of the Leites whisperer on this program, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. You seem to always kind of have an idea of what we're going to get from him. So I'm going to let you take this one. I'm historically wrong on Thales Leites.
I've had some okay success with old Thales Leites.
So like, you know me, is that I'll always try to find a way to be like, but Leites is getting underappreciated, but his best days are probably behind him at this point, and you're the guy who usually nails this guy, so who you got?
Yeah, well, I just feel like we're at a point in MMA where guys like Thales Leites are that old guard, and those old guard guys, they don't pick up that victory all the time, you know what I'm saying? If you look at this card for an example, Alexei Oleinik, the guy that we talked about, been around for a long time. Let's say this guy's considered potentially to be shot. I'm not picking against him. I think the younger, more athletic guy will do it. In the case of a guy like Lyoto Machida versus Vitor Belfort, at least you've matched them up together, right? Thales Leites, what we've seen in his last couple of fights is that even though he comes from that jiu-jitsu background, he'll try for takedowns, and when they don't work, and more times than not nowadays they ain't working, he flops around trying to pull guard, man. He doesn't want to stand with guys. He gets absolutely chewed up standing these days because he's very slow. He does not move his head, and punches on him seem to just rack up all types of damage. I go back to that fight versus Gegard Mousasi, and there's no shame in losing to Gegard Mousasi, but his face got turned into mincemeat just off a jab. He had no answer for it. He absolutely got crushed in that fight, and I believe that at an advanced age of taking that fight, it probably took a lot out of him. But even now when you see him, he's struggling, man. Brad Tavares put a beating on him. He stands in front of you, and he gets beat up. If you've got anything resembling footwork, if you've got anything resembling hand speed, and you just need a little bit of takedown defense, you're going to be that mold of fighter that can beat that guy. If you're one of these Chris Camozis of the world, if you're one of these really slow and plodding Tim Boach, maybe I can get you down one time and you have no, grappling really on the ground, he can still beat those guys. But this is not one of those cases. Jack Hermansson just got smoked by Thiago Santos, but that's just such a different type of matchup than what he's going to face here. I'm not overly worried about that. Leites doesn't have that same type of power. Yes, he's shown some decent power in the past. He knocked out Francis Carmel. What was that, 2014? He's not really demonstrating that power anymore. The last time I saw it was he wobbled Bisping, didn't knock him out, but I guess he hurt Michael Bisping. And again, How long ago was that? A long time ago. Things change in that time period. So I can't get behind Leites. When I think about Jack Hermansson comes from a wrestling background. He kind of got into mixed martial arts through his wrestling pedigree. So even though he wasn't some big Swedish standout, even though he's not an Olympic hopeful, even though he's not a guy that wrestled at a super high level, wrestling is his original base. But the guy seems to be remotely quick on his feet. Even though he's coming off a knockout loss, his chin really isn't that bad, and he's got decent hand speed. I think he's just going to dance around the perimeter and pick away at Leites. Leites will have an okay first round because he's going to have some gas in the tank. He'll push the pace. He'll try to push him up against the fence. But the more this guy gets hit, I go back to, the Jim Millers and the Joe Lozons and the guys that are in the situation. Back in the day, you eat a jab clear in the face and you're good. These guys now, they get hit with that same punch, they swell a lot. They slow down a lot. They get discombobulated a lot easier. And he's been hit a lot recently, Leites. So I just can't back him. If he's going to win this fight, you would have to think, well, he's a good submission guy. Maybe I can find some value in him at 7,900 that he'll be able to get the fight to the ground and get a submission. But he's not even really trying to submit guys like he used to be because he doesn't want to give up positioning. He gets that fight to the ground, he don't want to stand no more. He's just going to try to hold you down and do enough to win the round. He's been alternating wins and losses, I think, but he's lost something like 4 of his last 6. So I just feel like the best days are behind Leites, and he's at the point where even a guy like Jack Hermansson, who's not a standout by no means, should be able to have the same game plan that a guy like Tavares did and pick away at this guy, make him pay, hurt
Similar
him.
kind of style, to be honest.
Yeah, and I get that it's in Brazil, but like some of these guys, every single fight on this card is Brazilian against foreigner, except for Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Cooper, and I think that's why Dern's trying to be a fake Brazilian. But yeah, some of them are going to lose, and Leites seems like one of those guys the crowd would love for him to win. The UFC probably wouldn't mind for him to win. But I'm going to have to go with the younger European prospect in Hermansson.
Ramazan Emeev, 8,700 on DraftKings, taking on Alberto Mina. Look at that for 7,500, minus 220 Emeev, plus 180 Mina. It's really tough to know what you're going to get from Alberto Mina. The guy only fought like once a year.
Since 2015.
Since 2015. And then he's had 2 years off. It was like his last fight was like 2016. And let's face it, all of his wins are over straight up tomato cans that didn't belong.
Hey, take that back. Those are fan favorite tomato cans. Everybody likes my pile. Everybody likes Sexyama. Nobody really gives a shit about Shinzo Anzai. However,
you're proving my point right now.
I hear you.
Everybody that he beat is basically ousted from the country, except for Shinzo Anzai. He's still around. And he won his last fight, I believe.
He doesn't really fight all that often either, though.
But Emeev didn't really have a great performance in his first fight. I think at 8,700, I'm not really feeling Emeev in that spot. I would rather just go up and pay for, especially in GPPs, go up and pay for Warley Alves, who probably looking for that first round finish. And Mina's just such a wild card for me on this one because it's just like you can watch tape on him, but when you watch the tape, it's just like, well, this guy's done. Oh, this guy doesn't have a chin. And then he hasn't fought for 2 years. So has this guy been improving? What's really been going on? It's a really tough spot all around.
Yeah, well, see, the thing for me is that he's now 36 years old, and when you look back at Mina traditionally, is he doesn't really have a gas tank. He beats Shinzo Anzai in the first round. His fight versus Akiyama, he starts out awesome, and then flat out gasses and almost loses to Yoshihiro Sexyama. Let that sink in. And then his last fight against Pyle, he knocks him out in the second round, so you don't really see him gas. If you can push this guy, if you can kind of make this guy work, he traditionally gets really tired. And he's a very flashy striker. He's obviously coming from a grappling base. He's a 3rd degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a 2nd degree black belt in Judo. He's got some decent little foot sweeps. He's got some good takedowns from the clinch. And his striking is just super wild, probably because, and we see this with a lot of guys that are so good at Jiu-Jitsu, I don't really give a shit, man. I'll just throw whatever I want. What's the worst case scenario that...
You're going to take me to the ground?
Yeah, like they almost
right,
invite getting taken. Yeah, exactly. But with Emeev's fought basically his entire career at 185 pounds. This is his welterweight debut. So when you look at the fight with Sam Alvey, it's a terrible fight, but he basically just outmuscles Sam Alvey against the fence the entire time. Alvey can't do anything.
Taking Alvey down is really tough. Nobody...
It's super tough. And yet this guy just doesn't drain Alvey because he's got an endless cardio as well, but just controls him the entire time against the fence, beats him up a little bit with dirty boxing, and then secures takedowns on him. With Mina, if he takes that same approach and grinds him up against the cage, Mina's going to get tired, dude. And the more tired he gets, he's going to leave himself open. Emeev is like won, I think something like 12 of his last 13 or 11 of his last 12 fights. His only loss in that mix, he revenges 7 months later. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. The guy's not half bad. He's already got 4 victories over UFC veterans and debuted obviously against Sam Alvey in a fight that Alvey took that on short notice and missed weight. He came in at like 191 or something. So this guy's going from fighting Alvey at 191 to fighting Mina at 170 pounds. Dude, that's a massive discrepancy. Now, I'm not going to take him on DraftKings because I don't think he's going to finish a guy like Mina. He's smart enough to not overextend himself and possibly end up on the ground with this guy who is a grappling whiz. So he'll probably take that slow, plodding,
hold up
grind
against
this
the cage,
guy down.
dirty punches up against the cage, which don't score.
Knee to the body when I can, dirty boxing when I can, elbow him from the clinch when I can, but for the most part, just suck this guy's gas, and then you eventually...
Then you can take him down and kind of work from top when the guy's too tired to do anything
potentially
about
not worry about it. I think Akiyama showed exactly how to beat Mina. Now, people will be like, oh, dude, but Mina been away for a couple of years. Maybe we're going to see different... If you've got cardio problems at 33, 34, you're going to have cardio problems at 36. He didn't magically fix that in his time away from the sport. And he's a coach at a gym in Hong Kong. So, like, I don't know that he's made any improvements whatsoever. Whereas Emeev is a young, hungry, Azerbaijani, not Russian, but a tough dude. And I think he's going to pull this one out. I think he's going to pull it out. Minus 220 is not great, but I'll take a small play on there. 8,700 I don't like, so I'm going to avoid it, but I do have Emeev.
And finally, we've got Marcus Perez taking on James Boknevich. Perez is 9,200 on DraftKings, 7,000 for Boknevich, minus 310, plus 255. Boknevich, I don't do this very often. It's been a long time since I've done this.
Holy shit, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, Paul doesn't
Boknevich is the worst middleweight on the UFC's roster.
Really? Going that far?
His UFC debut was just, you were just watching, just like, how the hell did they sign this guy?
That is fair.
He had no redeeming
because he knows Ben
qualities.
Rothwell.
He was up against Trevin Giles. Trevin Giles, I guess his only redeeming quality is that he was tough enough to get into the second round before getting taken.
Yeah, but dude, when he went out, he was out. That was nasty.
Yeah. And like, toughness is not going to get you very far in this organization. And Marcus Perez, don't get me wrong, this guy's kind of a goofy weirdo. That fight against Anders in his last fight, he didn't really show much. He basically got controlled the entire fight. He showed that he was tough as well. He likes to throw a lot of spinning stuff and that type of thing. That would never work against somebody like Anders, who is, building the right way and is a supreme athlete, a collegiate football player. But it's going to work against this type of guy. I think the line gets set like this, where they go, 2 no-name guys, let's put a minus 310. Maybe some people will put a little bit of scratch on Boknevich because it's just like, too relative. The average casual guy has no idea who either one of these guys are. You know what I mean?
Yes, but the average person is definitely smart enough to put 2 and 2 together. Marcus Perez, sounds like he's Brazilian. They're in Brazil. Probably gonna win, and I think he gets the job done.
I think he gets a relatively early knockout here. I just don't. I legitimately, when I was watching that fight, felt uncomfortable watching Trevin Giles just basically style and do whatever he wanted to him. Like Boknevich didn't even have like a moment. He got taken down 5 times.
5 times. It's getting up.
Sure.
I think he's taken back down.
He's not gonna get taken down here. He's just gonna get. The crowd's gonna be roaring. You know how these Brazilian cards go. This is the first fight of the night. Crowd's gonna be roaring. They're looking for blood. And James Boknevich, you're the sacrifice. You're the human sacrifice to Marcus Perez, who I don't think is very good at all. And we'll be fading him down the line. DraftKings 9,200. I'm hoping that maybe Perez gets overlooked. Other people pay up to go get Nunes, or they pay down and take Dern and Lineker. I think having some Perez in there, he could be the guy above 9,000 that gets overlooked.
Yeah, I actually got to Marcus Perez as well. I think a lot of the time when you look at guys as being low level, and to the naked eye, they're just both 2 low level, no name guys, right? I think you're 100% right. But there's levels to this, and Marcus Perez has got to be viewed as a higher level than James Boknevich. Boknevich had actually, just to compare it, Boknevich had actually fought nobody of note prior to fighting in the UFC. Fair. Marcus Perez had notable victories. He beat UFC veteran Paulo Thiago. He beat UFC veteran Ildemar Alcantara. He won the LFA title, beating Ian Hesinch out of Colorado, who was undefeated 9-0 at the time, and has since won his last 2 fights since losing to Perez. So the guy had notable victories. But think for a moment. Let's say they would have switched opponents in their debut. Trevin Giles, I think, probably still beats Perez, but an interesting fight, and it would have gone the distance, and this guy would have taken it because he showed he could do that against Eric Anders. Eric Anders would have smoked out Boknevic in the first round.
Absolutely.
That is what would have happened.
Yep.
He was lucky to survive to the second round against Trevin Giles, but he got mounted like nothing. He's not very athletic. He comes from a very low-level football background. Apparently, he goes to the gym to basically keep himself in shape, and Ben Roth was like, "You're a heavyweight? There's no heavyweights, and what is it? He's the king of Kenosha, Wisconsin? Kenosha, Wisconsin. There's no big bodies around here. You're just going to be on our fight team. We'll show you some things." I think he's a blue belt, and Perez is a brown belt. This guy looked out of it on the ground against Trevin Giles. So when you say that it's probably not going to be a takedown, maybe not, but Perez could probably get this guy down, and he submitted Ian his last fight, or his 2 fights ago in LFA. I don't doubt that he can probably get this fight to the ground and submit him. But if it stays standing, he's tricky, he's hard to gauge, he's hard to time, he's got some okay shots. He probably just beats him standing. I think that this is a fight that could be a finish. I think at 310, you're taking what has to be viewed as a lower end guy. He's just fighting Paul Shaughnessy. I'm going to give you guys a history lesson. I'm going to give you a history lesson. When Paul Shaughnessy says the guy's the worst guy in the division, I can't recall one single time that guy went on to win. I'm
not very good at finding who's the best or who's any of that. But I know who the worst is. I can stare at them long enough to know that like this guy just doesn't fit in.
You have a fucking sterling reputation of picking the worst guy in the division. And Boknevic certainly looks like that. Most guys tend to have to lose 3 in order to get cut from the UFC. This is that level of guy that loses 2 in the UFC. And then gets released. He's got a long way to go. You can't take someone from a regional scene where he had racked up an 8-1 record, lost his debut, win 8 in a row over nobody, and then throwing him to the UFC against somebody who's half decent. And you know another thing that Marcus Perez and Trevin Giles had in common?
What?
Both former LFA champions. Like, it at least takes some skill to win an LFA title. Do you think Boknevic wins an LFA title? No chance. No chance. This guy curtain jerks on a Bellator undercard and loses.
Yep.
And you actually see a lot of UFC veterans do that nowadays. That's kind of the level that he's at, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the way I feel on this. I think that Marcus Perez gets the job done. The 9,200, even though it's one of those big price tags, I've kind of avoided some of the other big price tags. I don't love John Lineker. I don't love Amanda Nunes. Lyoto Machida, 8,900. At least it's only 8,900. But the 9,200 and Perez, on mock lineups that I've done, I can fit him, and I'm going to own some shares of that for sure.
GSP versus Nate, what do you think?
I think Nate Diaz is always going to be the shittier version of Nick Diaz, and we saw what happened there. I mean, the argument would have been prior to GSP versus Michael Bisping. The argument that you could make there is that we don't know what we're going to get out of George, but now we do, man.
Does George go down to 155?
No. They fight at 170. I don't know where the 155.
I've heard people saying that.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because, dude, we used to hear about it all the time. There was always rumors around that he could make 155.
But then when you went up to 185, plus he's got a problem with colitis.
Yeah,
he's not trying.
He's an older guy.
I think they wanted to set up GSP versus Connor. That was the natural thing. And then Connor throws dollies through windows, and
yeah. Okay, but let's say
there's like, all right, what's Plan B? Well, Nate Diaz is on Twitter complaining about how he can't get a fight, but doesn't actually accept any fights. So let's set him up.
Fair, but let's say we're not breaking down these fights. We're breaking down making that sweet monies for the UFC. Okay, we're like, Pa, tell you something, Pa. Best fight we can put together right now. Definitely GSP versus Conor McGregor. It's like, Conor McGregor? Fucked right now, bro. I just threw $1 through a window. Can't book this right now. How can we make GSP bigger than he is right now in a low-risk fight? High risk. Oh, shit. Nate Diaz. If he beats Nate Diaz, then it just sets up the McGregor fight.
You think
perfect.
About
sets it up perfect.
Think about
it's a big money
Nate
fight.
Diaz versus Benson Henderson. Just think about that fight.
Yeah, dude. Guys that can
GSP is just a bigger Benson Henderson.
Yeah.
With probably more skill.
Yeah, but also just look at
it would be basically a carbon copy of that fight.
No, it would be a carbon
that's how
copy.
You control Nate Diaz and win every single round.
It would be a carbon copy of him versus Nick Diaz. You are a better Ranger striker than me. I can take you down. I know I can take you down. I watched Conor McGregor take you down.
My teammate Rory was able to ransack you and throw you around way back at UFC 129.
German suplex this guy.
Plus, Nate hasn't fought in 2 years.
And he's not actually a welterweight.
And I don't think Nate Diaz is in the gym every single day getting ready. I think he's just hanging out.
All respect to Nate Diaz.
I think he's a great fight. I don't hate him.
Yeah, no, we all love him.
I love watching him fight, but I don't think that's a good matchup for him. That's setting up George. But that's a let's keep George busy for when eventually we can, because they'll probably go to the Khabib versus Conor fight, but they want to keep George around so that they can cash in on him versus Conor. Because they could go Conor versus GSP, whether Conor loses or wins against Khabib. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I hear you. But when you really think about it, as fans, the best fights that we want to see is George versus Khabib. If Khabib wants to come up, that'd be a fun time just because of the grappling acumen. If Colby Covington is to win the title against RDA, crazy. But if he was to win it, let George fuck this guy up. Come on.
You
Give
hate
him
him.
No, I'm a Colby Covington guy.
Okay.
But I like that dynamic.
I do.
Dude.
You have
that
like
the ultimate bad guy versus the ultimate
baby
good guy.
face.
Yeah.
I like it too.
And Colby Covington makes his living on just grappling guys.
Like he would,
you know?
nobody.
George is so humble and he can hold his own in the wrestling department that like, give me that fight. However, that fight can't sell a dime, so they're not going to make it.
No.
Nate Diaz. Give me Nate Diaz versus Justin Gaethje or Eddie Alvarez.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. Or him versus
The
Dustin
Eddie Alvarez
Poirier.
one is one that they could have made a long time ago because there's like they've got a beef there.
Yeah, and him versus Poirier be good times too. Like
it was like UFC 180. Remember, like he was in the corner for like Melendez, and there's a bunch of backstage stuff.
Come on, he's always getting
Yeah, of
shit. If you're
course.
fighting one of his boys,
Yeah.
you're getting
You're gonna
shit
get into it.
backstage. All I'm saying is, as fans, those are the fights that we want to see. The fights that it's like, oh man, stylistically, this is interesting. This makes me think about the matchup. This gets me excited. George versus Nate just doesn't do that. It doesn't leave much to the imagination. George is not I shouldn't say that. George is not an idiot. And so he's not gonna stand with him for a prolonged period of time. He's going to try to get the fight to the ground. Nate, not a moron, doesn't want to play guard jiu-jitsu. He's gonna try to keep the fight standing, or at the very least try to get back up. But I say it all the time. Styles make fights, and this is just we love both guys. We want to see both guys do what they do best against intriguing fights. This just doesn't do it for me. So.
I agree.
But it's the money
for
fight
them,
to
it's
make.
just about how many can we sell? They sold this company for $4 billion. Yeah. Just like the bills are starting to come in, Cody, and they got to pay those. They got to pay off their investors. So. That's just the WME, IMG era of the UFC.
Well, think about it in the sense that, let's say you just made this deal with ESPN, and you got to give them 15 events now, right? Yep. $10 million event, $150 million deal, you got to give them 15 events. They're not going to be great events. They're going to be okay. Then you got all your Fight Pass stuff, if you're going to even have Fight Pass stuff.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Then you still have to have a TV product. So we're still going to see fights trickle down, fight night cards that are going to end up on TV.
Are they?
Now, it has to be.
I'm just kind of confused by it, but they haven't really given out all the information.
Fox will have a certain amount of events. ESPN's app will have a certain amount of events. Fight Pass may only have 4 or 5 events, and then they're going to have that pay-per-view platform where they're going to still probably try to pump out 12 pay-per-views. Yep. Now, if you're the UFC, you're like, hey, who can sell these pay-per-views? Nobody at heavyweight, and I love Stipe, my guy, Croatian brethren, nobody at heavyweight sells. But Brock Lesnar can sell, so if we can get him in for a one-off, that could sell. McGregor could sell. Rousey's out of the question. Jones seems to be out of the question. The other guys that could remotely sell are the George St. Pierre's and the Khabibs, and those guys, and they're all Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz, Anderson. So those guys end up just all fighting each other, you know? George will fight versus Nate, and then George will fight versus Anderson, who's back from suspension. Division. And then George will fight Conor McGregor, and that's 3 more big fights for you, and that's all we can hope to get out of that. Nobody else is selling right now. It's the sad truth. Max Holloway's a gangster. Why isn't this guy able to sell? Tony Ferguson is a gangster.
True.
Why can't this guy sell? So they're just going to try to sell fights amongst the people that have a substantial reputation of being able to draw in numbers, and that's what it is. Why else are you seeing Daniel Cormier versus Miocic? I mean, I haven't really been watching this season.
They're out of options for Cormier at this point at 205 pounds.
I know he used to be a heavyweight dude, but if you watch Tough and he's coaching versus Stipe, and I mostly just watch for Brad Katona, probably to Winnipeg, baby. Dude, Stipe is literally twice his size.
Of course.
I'm really looking forward to breaking that down
Cormier
with my main man, Paul.
And we will.
He's twice the size.
And it's going to heat up a lot in the summer. As we were saying off the top, this card is maybe not the best, but
just to wet the old
guys
palate.
like me and you watch every single card. And UFC 225, we got...
that's a good-looking card.
That's a very
good-looking card.
You got CM Punk taking on Mike Truth Jackson, the fight that we were telling everybody was the
speaking
fight
of
they were
people-
supposed to make from the first place.
Speaking of people who
like
might be
once
able
they
to
saw
sell,
what Mickey Gall did to Mike Truth Jackson, it's like, oh, let's back off and give him the loser. Like that's what they should have done. But that was
it's so glorious. It's so glorious because you watch CM Punk's debut, and the first thing you think is, I would never bet that guy. And now you look at this fight. You look at this fight, it's like,
he's like a plus 160 underdog against Mike the True Jackson.
He's the underdog,
I'm
Paul.
just like, come
I'm
on,
letting
dude.
those dice roll, baby.
Come on, dude. There's a little precursor for a future. But yeah, it's like, come on, Duke Rufus. You got to do enough with this guy to get him through this guy. This guy's a journalist, like any other day of the week.
Yeah.
But shouts to Mike the True Jackson for taking the fight. This is a fight. Hey, this is really the only option they could have done.
He's living the dream. It's like, hey man, you're a pretty decent photographer. I like these pictures. Hey, you want to have 2 fights in the UFC? It's like, whoa, this escalated really quickly. How did you get signed in the UFC? This guy wouldn't last 1 round against the worst guy in Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. But hey, let them dice roll, baby. So looking forward to it. Lots to get at this summer, Paul.
All right, that is it for us. Hope you enjoyed the show. Want to thank Cody Saftic. You can follow him on Twitter at CJ Saftic. Want to thank Pat Mayo for being our director, switcher, producer, doing all that sweet stuff on the boards there. For both of those guys, I am Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.
Mayo experience! Experience!